Now, the final concept that we really need to get straight to understand Descartes' cosmological argument is this comes from a distinction between objective reality and formal reality. And the idea that is reality or their realities, difference between the reality that an idea has and formal reality. Formal reality might be, and the terminology, at least I found somewhat confusing. Formal reality is kind of measured on a scale of existence of perfection that things, that objects in the world actually have. That's what their formal reality is. It uses that scale of existence of perfection that we discussed earlier. For example, God would be at the top of the scale. If he exists, he'd have the highest. He'd have an infinite amount of formality, and maybe pretty low down on the scale, if we're thinking about it, is the amount of reality that ideas have. Okay, so that's the formal reality. That's the objects in the world. That's the amount of reality, the amount of existence, the amount of perfection they have. In addition to that, when we're thinking about ideas represent certain objects, or we think they. So the objective reality of an idea is equal to the formal reality that the thing that the idea represents would have, that the thing is about would have if it really existed. And let's go through a couple of examples, and I think they're going to help clarify what this objective reality is versus what this formal reality is. Now, let's consider a couple of cases. We're gonna measure everything infinite. The maximum on our now scale of reality is going to be 10, even though it's equivalent to infinite. The lowest is 0. So at the top of our scale of reality is God. So notice now, God is not an idea. God only has formal reality, and he has 10. We're going to put him at the top of the scale. I could put infinity, but I didn't know how much reality we give man. So that's one object, pretty important object. Another object, man. Well, I want to get us halfway between God and non-existence, so we'll give it 5 on the scale that we're using. And again, no objective reality because man is not an idea. Now, a rock, pretty low down on the scale, not quite at 0, but it's pretty low. Still, it's not an idea, so it doesn't have an objective reality, but its formal reality on our scale, since we start non-existence is 0, we'll give it about a 1. Now let's consider a few ideas. So we'll get an idea of, bad pun, we'll get an understanding of what objective reality is versus form. Now, ideas in general, they're like a little bit more real than a rock, because they're these mental things, they serve an important purpose, but they're still lower than most beings. So I'm going to say their formal reality, the idea itself, is at a 2. But the objective reality of the idea of God is the formal reality of the thing it represents, namely God, which is 10. So its objective reality, the reality that the object that it represents would have in formal reality, is that number. Go through the next example. Man. Again, it's an idea, so its formal reality is 2. All ideas are going to have about the same formal reality. Maybe God, the idea is a little bit better than the other one, so it might be a little higher. But we'll say they're all about 2. But the objective reality that the idea of a man has is that of 5, because the man's formal reality is 5. And finally, the idea of a rock, its formal reality is 2, but the object it represents has a formal reality of one. So if it existed, so its objective reality is one. Now I think armed with this notion, if we understand Descartes' distinction here, I think we're going to come up with the causal principle and the idea of causality, idea causality that he has in mind, that he thinks makes